The church bells had stopped ringing an hour ago, but Elena Cross could still hear them, sharp and mocking inside her skull. Each phantom chime another reminder that she'd been a fool. She sat on a flat rock overlooking a canyon that had no name, her wedding dress torn at the hem and caked with red dust. The veil had blown away somewhere between the church and here. She didn't remember losing it, didn't remember much of anything except the look on Victor Hale's face when he'd leaned close, so close the guest thought he might kiss her early, and whispered, "I can't do this." Then he'd walked, just turned on his polished heel and walked straight down the aisle, past her father, past the mayor, past every person in Salvation Creek who'd watched her grow up. The door had swung shut behind him with a soft, final click. Elena had stood there, frozen, while the silence grew teeth. Someone had gasped. Someone else had laughed. She was sure of it. Her father had tried to take her arm, but she'd pulled away, lifted her skirts, and run. Out the side door, through the cemetery, into the hills where the town ended and the wilderness began, where nothing could touch her except the wind and her own humiliation. That was 4 hours ago, maybe 5. The sun was setting now, spilling orange and purple across the sky like a bruise. She wasn't crying anymore. Her eyes were dry, stinging with dust and exhaustion. She'd cried herself empty somewhere around mile 2, sobbing so hard she'd vomited behind a cedar tree. Now there was just the hollowness, the kind that made you wonder if you'd ever been whole to begin with. A hawk circled overhead, lazy and indifferent. Elena watched it and thought, I could just stay here. No one would come looking. Her father was probably drowning himself in whiskey by now. And her mother, well, her mother had warned her about Victor. "That boy's got ambition," she'd said, "but ambition doesn't keep you warm at night." Elena had ignored her because Victor was handsome and charming, and every girl in town wanted him. And he'd chosen her, except he hadn't, not really. She wondered distantly if he'd ever intended to marry her at all, or if the whole thing had been some kind of elaborate joke. Maybe there was another woman. Maybe he'd gotten cold feet. Maybe he'd simply looked at her standing there in white and realized he could do better. It didn't matter. The result was the same. She stood brushing dirt off her skirts, a pointless gesture, but it gave her hands something to do. Her legs were shaking. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, hadn't slept. The adrenaline that had carried her out of town was gone now, replaced by a bone-deep weariness that made every movement feel like wading through mud. She needed to go back, face it, face them. The thought made her stomach clench. Lost? The voice came from behind her, low and rough, and Elena spun so fast she nearly fell. Her heel caught on a rock, and she stumbled, arms windmilling. A hand shot out and caught her wrist. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 35, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face that looked like it had been carved with a dull blade. All hard angles and old scars. He was wearing work clothes, dusty and worn, and he smelled like leather and horses and sweat. His grip on her wrist was firm but not cruel. He steadied her, then let go and stepped back, his expression flat. "You always run around the canyon in a wedding dress?" he asked. Elena stared at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. She couldn't find words. There were too many, all tangled together in her throat. He waited, patient as stone. She swallowed hard. "I'm not lost." "No?" He glanced past her, toward the canyon, then back at her face. His eyes were pale gray, sharp and assessing. "You planning to jump?" "What? No. Good." He tipped his head toward the horizon, where the last light was fading fast. "You got somewhere to be before dark, or are you planning to freeze out here?" The practicality of the question cut through the fog in her brain. She looked around. The temperature was already dropping. She had no coat, no food, no water. She hadn't thought past running. Her voice cracked. "You're from Salvation Creek," he said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. "Long walk back. Sun's almost gone." He turned, scanning the scrubland, then looked at her again. His face was unreadable. "There's a ranch about 2 miles east. You can get a meal and a bed there. Head out in the morning." "I don't have any money." "Didn't ask for money." Elena blinked. "Why would you?" "Because you'll die out here if you don't eat something." He said it like he was commenting on the weather. "And I'm not in the mood to find a body on my property tomorrow." His property. She trailed off, trying to place him. She didn't recognize him, but that didn't mean much. Salvation Creek wasn't the only town in the territory. Cole Barrett, he said. I run cattle about 10 miles north of here. The name didn't ring any bells. She swallowed. Elena Cross. He nodded once, like he'd already guessed. Of course he had. How many women were running around the frontier in wedding dresses today? Come on, he said, and started walking. Elena didn't move. I don't know you. He stopped and glanced back at her, and for the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. That's true. But you got two choices right now. Come with me, or stay out here and hope the coyotes aren't hungry tonight. She looked around again. The shadows were getting longer, darker. The wind was picking up, cold and biting. She thought of the church, the stairs, the whispers that would follow her everywhere. She thought of Victor's back as he walked away. All right, she said quietly. Cole turned and kept walking. Elena gathered up her skirts and followed. The ranch was smaller than she'd expected. A sturdy house with a stone chimney, a barn, a few outbuildings scattered across the property. Fences stretched out in every direction, disappearing into the dusk. There were cattle somewhere beyond, lowing softly in the distance. Cole led her to the house without a word. He pushed the door open and stepped inside, and Elena hesitated on the threshold. You coming or not? He called. She stepped in. The interior was plain but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, a table and chairs sat near the window, and a narrow staircase led up to what she assumed was a loft. There were no curtains, no decorations, nothing soft or welcoming. It looked like a place built for function, not comfort. Cole moved to the fireplace and started building a fire with practiced efficiency. There's bread and cheese in the cupboard, he said, without looking at her. Help yourself. Elena stood in the middle of the room, still clutching her ruined skirts, feeling absurdly out of place. I don't want to impose, you already are. He struck a match, and the kindling caught. Eat anyway. She bristled at the bluntness, but her stomach was growling loud enough that she couldn't argue. She crossed to the cupboard and found the bread, dense and dark, probably homemade, and a wedge of hard cheese. There was a knife on the counter. She cut herself a piece of each and ate standing up, too aware of Cole's presence to sit. The bread was dry, the cheese sharp and salty. It was the best thing she'd tasted in days. Cole finished with the fire and straightened, dusting off his hands. He watched her for a moment, then said, You can sleep in the loft. I'll stay down here. Elena swallowed. Thank you. He shrugged. Don't thank me yet. There was something in his tone that made her pause. What do you mean? Cole crossed his arms and leaned against the mantel, studying her with those cold gray eyes. You planning to go back to town? The question hit like a fist to the sternum. I don't know. That mean yes or no? I don't know, she repeated, sharper this time. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. But you should know. Going back won't change what happened. People don't forget something like that. They'll talk. They'll pity you. Some of them will enjoy it. Elena's hands clenched around the bread. You don't know that. I know people. He said it without malice, just cold certainty. And I know how towns like Salvation Creek work. You'll spend the rest of your life as the woman who got left at the altar. Every conversation, every glance, it'll follow you. She wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. She could already imagine it. The sympathetic smiles that didn't reach people's eyes, the whispers that would stop the moment she entered a room. So what am I supposed to do? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You could stay. Elena's head snapped up. What? Here, on the ranch. She stared at him. You're joking. Do I look like I'm joking? He didn't. His face was as serious as stone. You don't even know me, Elena said. Don't need to. He straightened, arms still crossed. I need help around here, someone to cook, clean, manage the house, maybe learn to handle the books. In exchange, you get a roof over your head and 3 meals a day. You want a housekeeper? No. He met her eyes. I want a wife. The room went very still. Elena's heart was suddenly loud in her ears. You're insane. Maybe. He didn't look away. But it's a fair deal. You marry me, you get stability. A place where no one knows what happened. No pity, No whispers. Just work. And what do you get? Someone to run the house so I can run the ranch. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing livestock. I'm not looking for love, if that's what you're worried about. This is business. You do your part, I do mine. That's it. Elena's mind was reeling. You can't be serious. I'm serious. He moved away from the fireplace, crossing to the window. Think about it. You go back to Salvation Creek, you'll be the town scandal for the next 20 years. Or you stay here, start over, new name, new life. No one has to know what happened today. Except you. I don't care what happened today. He glanced at her over his shoulder. I care whether you can work, whether you'll pull your weight. The rest doesn't matter to me. She should have been offended. Should have thrown the bread at his head and stormed out into the night. But instead, she found herself actually considering it. Because he was right. Going back meant facing Victor, facing her parents, facing an entire town that had watched her humiliation. It meant becoming a cautionary tale, a spinster before she'd even turned 24. But staying here, marrying a stranger, that was madness, wasn't it? You don't love me, she said. No. And you don't expect me to love you. No. Then why marriage? Why not just hire someone? Cole turned to face her fully. Because hired help leaves. A wife stays. And besides, he paused, something harder entering his expression. People talk less when things are legal. There was a story there, Elena realized. Something in his past that made him want the formality, the legitimacy. But she didn't ask. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. I need time to think, she said finally. You've got until morning. He moved toward the stairs. Loft's up there. Blankets are in the chest. I'll be down here if you need anything. He didn't wait for a response, just climbed the stairs and disappeared into the loft, leaving Elena alone with the fire and her spinning thoughts. She sank into one of the chairs, her legs finally giving out. The bread sat heavy in her stomach. The firelight danced across the walls, warm and hypnotic. A wife. To a man she'd met an hour ago. It was absurd, reckless, possibly the stupidest thing she could do. But what was the alternative? She thought of Victor, of the way he'd looked at her, or rather, through her, before he walked away. Like she was nothing, less than nothing. She thought of her father's face, twisted with shame, her mother's "I told you so" silence. She thought of spending the rest of her life in that town, a ghost haunting her own existence. And then she thought of Cole's offer. Blunt, cold, transactional, but honest. No false promises. No illusions of romance. Just survival. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than she deserved. Elena pulled her knees up to her chest and stared into the fire, watching the flames devour the wood, turning it to ash and light. By the time the fire burned low, she'd made her decision. Morning came gray and cold. Elena woke stiff and disoriented, her body aching from sleeping in the chair. She'd meant to go up to the loft, but exhaustion had pulled her under before she could move. Cole was already awake. She could hear him moving around outside, the creak of the barn door, the low murmur of his voice talking to the horses. She stood and smoothed down her dress, grimacing at the state of it. The hem was in tatters, the bodice stained with sweat and dust. She looked like a scarecrow. The door opened and Cole stepped in carrying a pail of water. He set it by the basin without looking at her. "There's soap if you want to wash up," he said, "and I can spare a shirt and trousers if you want to get out of that thing." Elena nodded mutely. He disappeared back outside, and she took the opportunity to wash her face and hands, scrubbing away the grime of yesterday. The cold water was shocking, bracing. It cleared her head. When Cole came back, he was carrying a bundle of clothes. He set them on the table. "They'll be big, but they're clean." "Thank you." He nodded and turned toward the door, giving her privacy. "Cole." He stopped. Elena took a breath. "I've thought about your offer." He turned back, his face carefully neutral. "And?" "I'll do it." Something shifted in his expression, not relief exactly, more like satisfaction. A problem solved. "All right," he said. "We'll ride into Cottonwood this afternoon. There's a preacher there who doesn't ask questions." "That fast?" "No point waiting." He met her eyes. "Unless you've changed your mind." "No." The word came out stronger than she felt. No, I haven't. Good. He moved toward the door again, then paused. You should know, this won't be easy. Ranch life is hard. The work doesn't stop, and I won't go easy on you just because you're a woman. I didn't ask you to. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. No, I don't suppose you did. They rode to Cottonwood in silence. Elena wore Cole's clothes, trousers that she had to roll at the ankles and a shirt that hung off her shoulders like a sail. She'd tied her hair back with a strip of cloth torn from her ruined dress. The rest of the dress she'd left behind folded on the chair like a shed skin. Cole had given her a horse, a sturdy mare with a white blaze, and she'd climbed into the saddle without complaint, even though it had been years since she'd ridden. Her thighs burned within the first mile, but she didn't say anything, just gritted her teeth and kept pace. Cottonwood was smaller than Salvation Creek, barely more than a crossroads with a general store and a saloon. The church was a whitewash building at the edge of town, simple and unadorned. The preacher was an old man with kind eyes and hands that trembled slightly as he opened his Bible. He didn't ask why they were in such a hurry, didn't comment on Elena's borrowed clothes or the fact that they'd arrived without rings or witnesses. He just married them. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. Cole's voice was steady when he spoke his vows. Elena's shook just once, but she got through them. You may kiss the bride, the preacher said. Cole looked at Elena. She looked back. He leaned in and pressed his lips to hers. Brief, chaste, perfunctory. It was nothing like the kisses Victor had given her, all heat and promise. This was a signature on a contract. When he pulled back, Elena felt oddly hollow. Congratulations, the preacher said, smiling. Cole handed him a few coins, and they left. Outside, the sun was high and harsh. Elena stood on the church steps and stared at the horizon, trying to process what she'd just done. She was married. To a stranger. In borrowed clothes, with no flowers, no music, no one who knew her name. Ready? Cole asked. Elena turned to him. He was watching her with that same unreadable expression, patient and distant. She nodded. Yes. They rode back to the ranch in silence, and somewhere along the way, Elena stopped being Elena Cross. She became Elena Barrett, and the girl who'd been left at the altar ceased to exist. The first week was brutal. Cole hadn't lied. Ranch life was hard. Elena woke before dawn every day to the sound of him moving around below, already dressed and heading out to tend the cattle. She'd stumble down from the loft, bleary-eyed, and start the fire to make coffee. Cooking was a challenge. She knew the basics, but Cole's kitchen was sparse, and she had to stretch what little they had. Beans, bacon, cornbread. The same meals over and over until she thought she'd scream. Cole never complained. He ate whatever she put in front of him, methodically and without comment. If it was good, he didn't say. If it was bad, he didn't say that either. He just finished his plate, washed it, and went back to work. It was maddening. Elena threw herself into the work to keep from thinking too much. She scrubbed floors that didn't need scrubbing, washed clothes until her hands were raw, reorganized the cupboards 3 times. Anything to stay busy. At night, Cole slept downstairs on a bedroll near the fire, and Elena took the loft. They barely spoke except when necessary. Need more firewood. I'll get it. Fence is down on the north pasture. I'll ride out tomorrow. It was like living with a ghost, but slowly, grudgingly, Elena started to find a rhythm. She learned to cook over an open fire without burning everything. Learned to manage the stores so they didn't run out of flour or coffee. Learned to mend clothes and harnesses and anything else that needed fixing, and she learned to ride. Cole had given her the mare, whose name, she discovered, was Ash, and told her she'd need to be able to handle herself on horseback if she was going to live out here. So every afternoon, after the morning chores were done, Elena saddled Ash and rode the property. At first it was terrifying. Her muscles screamed in protest, and she nearly fell off twice. But Ash was patient, and Elena was stubborn, and bit by bit, she improved. By the end of the second week, she could stay in the saddle for an hour without feeling like she was going to die. By the end of the third, she could keep up with Cole when he rode the fence lines. He noticed. Didn't say anything, but she caught him watching her sometimes, a flicker of something, approval maybe, in his eyes. It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd gotten since arriving. The first real test came on a Tuesday. Elena was in the house, kneading dough for bread, when she heard shouting outside. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the window. 3 men on horseback were riding up to the house. They looked rough, unshaven, trail-worn, with guns on their hips and hard eyes. Cole was in the yard, standing between them and the house. His posture was relaxed, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. She moved to the door and opened it a crack, listening. "Just want to water the horses," one of the men was saying. He had a lazy drawl and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No trouble." "Creek's a mile south," Cole said. "You can water there." "That's a long mile." The man leaned forward in his saddle. "And we're real thirsty." "Not my problem." The man's smile faded. "You sure about that?" "I'm sure." Cole's voice didn't rise, but there was steel in it. "Move on." The 3 men exchanged looks. For a moment, Elena thought they might push it, might draw their guns, might rush the house. But then the leader shrugged and turned his horse. "Suit yourself." They rode off, slow and deliberate, like they wanted to make sure Cole knew they were leaving by choice, not because they'd been intimidated. Elena waited until they were out of sight before stepping outside. Cole was still standing in the yard, watching the horizon. "Who were they?" she asked. "Drifters, maybe rustlers." He didn't look at her. "They'll be back." "How do you know?" "Because they always come back." He finally turned, and his eyes were colder than she'd ever seen them. "This land doesn't forgive weakness. You show it once, and people will take everything you have." Elena crossed her arms. "What do you want me to do?" "Learn to shoot." She blinked. "What? If they come back and I'm not here? You need to be able to defend yourself." He started toward the barn. "Come on." Elena followed, her heart pounding. Inside the barn, Cole opened a trunk and pulled out a rifle. He checked it, loaded it, then handed it to her. It was heavier than she expected. "Ever fired one of these?" he asked. "No." "Then pay attention." He spent the next hour teaching her how to hold it, how to aim, how to breathe and squeeze the trigger instead of pulling. They set up targets in the yard, old bottles and cans, and he made her practice until her shoulder was bruised and her ears were ringing. She missed more than she hit, but by the end, she could at least hit the fence post 3 times out of 10. "It's a start," Cole said. "Keep practicing." "You really think they'll come back?" "I think you should be ready in case they do." That night, Elena lay in the loft and stared at the ceiling, the weight of the rifle still ghosting through her arms. She'd married a stranger and moved to the middle of nowhere, and now she was learning to shoot people. It should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time since the wedding, she felt something other than numb. She felt alive. The rustlers didn't come back that week, or the next, but Elena kept practicing. Every afternoon after the chores were done and the bread was rising, she took the rifle out to the yard and fired at targets until her aim improved. Cole watched sometimes, leaning against the barn with his arms crossed, offering the occasional terse correction. "You're jerking the trigger. Squeeze it. Your stance is too wide. Tighten up." "Better." That last one felt like winning a war. By the 4th week, Elena could hit a can at 50 yards more often than not. Her hands stopped shaking when she held the rifle. The kick didn't surprise her anymore. She was getting used to it. To all of it. The early mornings, the endless work, the silence that stretched between her and Cole like a canyon. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was becoming familiar, and familiar was something. She learned the rhythms of the ranch, when the cattle needed moving, when the fences needed mending, when supplies ran low and someone had to make the long ride to Cottonwood. She learned to read the weather by the color of the sky and the way the wind smelled, learned to tell when a horse was favoring a leg or when a cow was sick before it showed obvious symptoms. Cole didn't teach her these things directly. He just did his work, and she watched and learned. It was strange, this quiet partnership. They barely spoke, but they were learning to move around each other. She'd start coffee before he asked. He'd bring in firewood before she needed it. Small gestures, practical and unromantic. But they added up to something. Not love. She wasn't fool enough to call it that. But maybe respect. Maybe the beginning of trust. No. On a cold morning in her 5th week on the ranch, Elena woke to find Cole already gone. Not unusual, he often left before dawn to check the herd, but something felt off. She dressed quickly and went downstairs. The fire was cold, the coffee unmade. Cole's rifle was missing from its place by the door. Elena's stomach tightened. She made coffee anyway, hands moving on autopilot, then stood by the window and watched the empty yard. An hour passed. Then 2. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist, and still Cole didn't return. Elena told herself not to worry. He knew this land better than anyone. He could handle himself. But the memory of those 3 men, their hard eyes, their lazy smiles, kept circling back. By noon, she couldn't stand it anymore. She saddled Ash, grabbed the rifle, and rode out. The north pasture was where he'd said he was going. Elena pushed Ash hard, the landscape blurring past, scrub brush and red rocks and endless sky. Her heart was pounding, though she couldn't say exactly why. She found him near the creek. He was on foot, his horse grazing nearby, and he was crouched next to something on the ground. As Elena got closer, she saw it was a calf, young, maybe a few months old, lying on its side and breathing in harsh, labored gasps. Cole looked up as she approached. "What are you doing out here?" "You were gone a long time." She dismounted and came closer, keeping her voice level. "What happened?" "Snake bite." He nodded at the calf. "Got her on the leg. She's not going to make it." Elena knelt beside him and looked at the calf. Its eyes were wide and glassy, foam flecking its mouth. The leg was swollen grotesquely, the skin discolored. "Can't you do something?" she asked. "Like what?" Cole's voice was flat. "It's too far gone. Best thing I can do is put it down quick." He stood and drew his pistol. Elena's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. "Wait!" He looked at her surprised. "Elena?" "Just wait." She didn't know what she was asking for. The calf was dying, she could see that. But the thought of just ending it without even trying. "There's nothing to try," Cole said, reading her face. "I've seen this before. The venom's in her blood. Even if we got her back to the ranch, she wouldn't last the night." "Then let her have the night." Cole stared at her for a long moment. Then he holstered the pistol. "You want to carry her back?" "Yes." "She's heavier than she looks." "I don't care." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "All right, your call." Between the 2 of them, they managed to lift the calf onto Cole's horse. It was awkward, exhausting work, and the calf fought weakly, too far gone to understand they were trying to help. They made it back to the ranch as the sun was setting. Cole set up a pen in the barn, and they laid the calf on a bed of straw. Elena brought water, though the calf couldn't drink. Brought a blanket, though it didn't seem to help. Cole watched her fuss over the dying animal, his face unreadable. "You know this won't change anything," he said finally. "I know." "Then why?" Elena looked up at him. "Because she deserves more than just a bullet." Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded and left her alone with the calf. Elena stayed in the barn all night. The calf died just before dawn, its breathing slowing and then stopping altogether, leaving only silence. She sat with it for a while longer, feeling foolish and sad and strangely at peace. When she finally went back to the house, Cole was making coffee. He glanced at her. "It's done?" "Yes." He poured her a cup and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed briefly. "Thank you," Elena said quietly. "For what?" "For letting me try." Cole looked at her for a long moment, his pale eyes searching hers. Then he said, "You did good out there yesterday, riding out alone. Not many people would have done that. It wasn't much, just a handful of words. But coming from him, it felt like the sun breaking through clouds." Elena wrapped her hands around the coffee cup and let the warmth seep into her bones. Outside, the ranch was waking up, the cattle lowing, the wind picking up, the endless work waiting. But for just this moment, standing in the kitchen with a man who was still mostly a stranger, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like she might belong. The 6th week brought rain. Not the gentle kind, but the violent storms that turned the sky black and the ground to mud. Thunder rolled across the hills like cannon fire, and lightning split the darkness in jagged white scars. Elena had never liked storms. As a child, she used to hide under her bed until they passed. But there was nowhere to hide on the ranch, and the work didn't stop just because the sky was falling. She and Cole moved through the storm like ghosts, checking the barn, securing anything that might blow away, making sure the animals were safe. The rain soaked through her clothes in minutes, plastering her hair to her skull and turning her fingers numb. By the time they made it back to the house, they were both drenched and shivering. Cole built up the fire while Elena peeled off her wet coat and boots. She stood as close to the flames as she dared, teeth chattering. "Get out of those clothes," Cole said, not looking at her. "You'll catch your death." Elena nodded and climbed up to the loft. She changed into dry clothes, another one of Cole's shirts and a pair of trousers, and came back down, toweling her hair. Cole had changed too. He was sitting at the table, cleaning his rifle with methodical precision. The storm raged outside, shaking the windows. "Does it always rain like this?" Elena asked, pulling a chair closer to the fire. "This time of year?" "Sometimes." He didn't look up from the rifle. "Could last a day, could last a week." "A week?" Seen it happen. He set the rifle aside and finally looked at her. "You scared of storms?" "No?" The lie came automatically. His mouth twitched. "You're a terrible liar." Elena scowled. "I'm not scared. I just don't like them." "That's the same thing." "It's not." "If you say so." He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the rain. "They used to scare me too, when I was a kid." Elena blinked. It was the first personal thing he'd ever said to her. "What changed?" "I grew up." He was quiet for a moment. "Lost people I cared about. After that, storms seemed small." There was a weight to the words that made Elena's chest tighten. She wanted to ask, "Who did you lose?" But something in his posture told her the door was already closing. Instead, she said, "I'm sorry." Cole shrugged. It was a long time ago. The storm howled, and they lapsed into silence. But it felt different now. Less empty, like they were sharing the quiet instead of just enduring it. Elena pulled her knees up to her chest and watched the fire, and for the first time since arriving, she didn't feel quite so alone. The rain stopped 3 days later, leaving the world washed clean and gleaming. Elena stepped outside and breathed in the smell of wet earth and sagebrush, feeling something loosen in her chest. The sky was impossibly blue, the kind of blue that made you believe in second chances. Cole was already working, repairing a section of fence that had been damaged by the storm. Elena grabbed a hammer and went to help without being asked. They worked side by side, Elena holding the post steady while Cole drove the nails. Their movements fell into an easy rhythm, unspoken and efficient. "You're getting good at this," Cole said after a while. Elena glanced at him, surprised. "At what?" "All of it, the work, the ranch." He paused, then added, "I wasn't sure you'd last a week." "Neither was I." He smiled, an actual smile, small but real. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges. Elena looked away, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. They finished the fence as the sun climbed higher, and when they walked back to the house, Elena realized her hands weren't soft anymore. They were calloused, strong, capable. She'd changed. Out here in the wilderness, away from everything she'd known, she'd become someone new. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't a bad thing. The heat came back with a vengeance after the rain, turning the ranch into a furnace by midday. Elena learned to work in the early mornings and late evenings, hiding from the sun during the brutal afternoon hours when even the cattle sought shade. She was mucking out the barn one morning when she heard horses approaching. Multiple riders, moving fast. Her stomach dropped. She set down the pitchfork and moved to the door, wiping sweat from her forehead. Cole was already in the yard, standing with that same deceptive calm he always had when trouble showed up. 3 men on horseback were pulling up near the house, and Elena's breath caught when she recognized them. The same drifters from before. The ones Cole had turned away. The leader, the one with the lazy smile, dismounted and stretched, making a show of looking around. "Nice place you got here, Barrett. Real nice." "You're on my land," Cole said. His voice was level, but Elena could hear the warning underneath. "Are we?" The man grinned. "Funny thing about land out here. Hard to tell where one piece ends and another begins." The other 2 riders stayed mounted, hands resting near their guns. Not drawing, but ready. Elena's hand moved to the rifle leaning against the barn wall. She picked it up slowly, checking that it was loaded. Her heart was hammering, but her hands were steady. Cole noticed the movement. He didn't look at her, but she saw his shoulders relax slightly. Good. He knew she was armed. You boys need to move on, Cole said. Now. The leader laughed. That's not very neighborly. We just wanted to talk business. We don't have business. Sure we do. The man took a step closer. See, we've been watching this place. You run a decent operation here. Good cattle, good land. Must be tough managing it all by yourself. I manage fine, but you could manage better with the right partners. The man's smile widened. We're offering protection. Make sure nothing unfortunate happens to your stock or your property. Elena felt cold despite the heat. She'd heard stories about men like this, criminals who preyed on isolated ranchers, demanding money in exchange for not burning their barns or scattering their herds. I don't need protection, Cole said. Everyone needs protection out here. Lots of things can go wrong. Fires, stampedes, accidents. The man shrugged. Be a shame if something happened to this nice place, or to that pretty wife of yours. Elena stepped out of the barn, rifle raised to her shoulder, aimed directly at the leader's chest. You want to finish that thought? She asked, her voice colder than she'd ever heard it. The three men turned to look at her. The leader's smile faltered. Now, ma'am, get off our land. Elena kept the rifle steady. You've got 10 seconds. One of the mounted men reached for his gun. Elena shifted her aim to him without hesitation. I wouldn't, she said. I'm new to this, so my hands might slip. Hate for someone to get shot by accident. Cole's mouth twitched, almost a smile. You heard her. Move. The leader looked between them, calculating. Elena could see him weighing the odds, trying to decide if they were bluffing. She thumbed back the hammer. The click was loud in the silence. 10, she said softly. The man raised his hand, still grinning, but his eyes had gone hard. All right. We're going. But you're making a mistake, Barrett. Big mistake. I'll take my chances. The three men mounted up and rode off, slower this time, like they wanted to make sure everyone knew they weren't running. Elena kept the rifle raised until they disappeared over the ridge. Only then did she lower it, her arms shaking from the adrenaline. Cole walked over to her. You all right? I'm fine. Her voice didn't sound fine. It sounded thin, stretched tight. You did good, Cole said quietly. Real good. Elena looked at him. His face was serious, but there was something else there. Pride, maybe. Respect. They'll come back, she said. I know. What do we do? Cole took the rifle from her gently and checked it, then handed it back. We get ready. That afternoon, he showed her how to bar the doors and windows, how to set up firing positions with good sight lines. He moved extra ammunition into the house and made sure all the rifles were cleaned and loaded. If they come at night, he said, stay low and don't shoot unless you're sure of your target. They'll try to spook us first. Maybe fire a few shots, light something on fire. Don't panic. Wait for a clean shot. Elena nodded, absorbing it all. This was insane. She'd gone from a church wedding to learning tactical defense in less than 2 months. But she didn't suggest leaving, didn't even think about it. This was her land now, her home, and she'd be damned if she let anyone take it. The attack came 3 nights later. Elena woke to the sound of gunfire, sharp cracks that split the darkness like lightning. She rolled out of bed and grabbed the rifle, her body moving on instinct. Elena, Cole's voice from below, stay up there. She ignored him and scrambled down the ladder. Cole was at the window, rifle in hand, firing into the darkness. How many? She asked, taking position at the opposite window. At least 4, maybe more. He fired again. They're trying to get to the barn. Elena looked out and saw shadows moving in the moonlight, figures running between the outbuildings. One of them threw something, and a moment later flames erupted on the side of the barn. Fire! She shouted. I see it. Cole's jaw was tight. We can't let them burn us out. You cover me. I'm going for the water barrels. That's suicide. Just do it. He was out the door before she could argue, running low and fast toward the well. Elena forced herself to focus, tracking the shadows, looking for targets. There. A man crouched behind the fence. She aimed, exhaled, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The man went down. She didn't let herself think about it, just worked the bolt and found another target. Cole reached the water barrels and started hauling buckets toward the barn. One of the attackers spotted him and raised a pistol. Elena fired first. The man stumbled and fell. "Got him!" she yelled. Cole threw water on the flames, working frantically. The fire was spreading, licking up the dry wood. If it reached the hay inside, the whole barn would go up. More gunfire erupted from the darkness. Elena ducked as a bullet shattered the window above her head, spraying glass. She came back up and fired blindly into the shadows, trying to give Cole cover. "Fall back!" someone shouted from outside. "Fall back!" The shadowy figures retreated, melting into the darkness beyond the fence line. A few more scattered shots, and then silence. Elena stayed at the window, rifle ready, her ears ringing. Cole put out the last of the flames and stood there for a moment, chest heaving. Then he ran back to the house, slamming the door behind him. "You hit?" he asked immediately. "No, you?" "I'm fine." He moved to the window and scanned the darkness. "They're regrouping. They'll try again." But they didn't. The rest of the night passed in tense silence, both of them taking turns watching while the other rested. When dawn finally broke, the yard was empty except for 2 bodies near the fence. Elena stared at them from the window, her stomach churning. "I killed someone," she said, her voice distant. Cole came to stand beside her. "You defended your home." "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." He said it with absolute certainty. "They came here to hurt us, to take what we've built. You didn't have a choice." Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to feel righteous or justified or something other than sick and hollow. But all she felt was tired. "Come on," Cole said gently. "Let's check the damage." The barn had a scorched section along one wall, but the structure was intact. The fences were shot up in places, and they found blood trails leading away from the property, but the cattle were safe and the house was secure. "Could have been worse," Cole said, examining the burn marks. Elena laughed, a short, bitter sound. "That's your standard? Could have been worse? Out here?" "Yes." He looked at her. "You held your ground, Elena. A lot of people would have run." "Where would I run to?" "Anywhere. Salvation Creek, Cottonwood, anywhere that isn't here." He paused. "But you didn't." She met his eyes. "This is my home now." Something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or recognition. "Yes," he said quietly. "It is." They buried the bodies that afternoon in unmarked graves beyond the property line. It felt wrong not to say something, but Elena didn't know what to say, and Cole didn't seem inclined to try. When it was done, they walked back to the house in silence. That night, Cole didn't sleep downstairs. He climbed up to the loft and sat with his back against the wall, rifle across his knees. "You don't have to," Elena started. "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "They might come back tonight. I'm not leaving you up here alone." Elena wanted to argue, but she was too exhausted. She lay down on her bedroll and pulled the blanket up to her chin, acutely aware of Cole sitting a few feet away. "Thank you," she said softly, "for before, for trusting me to cover you. You earned it." She closed her eyes, listening to the sound of his breathing, and eventually drifted into an uneasy sleep. When she woke hours later, the sun was streaming through the gaps in the walls. Cole was still sitting against the wall, but his head had drooped forward, his rifle slack in his hands. Asleep. Elena sat up quietly and studied him in the morning light. Without the hard set to his jaw, without the constant vigilance, he looked younger, more human. She wondered what his life had been like before she arrived, how long he'd been alone out here, what ghosts he carried that made him so comfortable with silence. As if sensing her gaze, Cole's eyes opened. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then he cleared his throat and stood, the moment breaking. "I'll check the perimeter." He climbed down, and Elena was left alone with her thoughts. The days that followed were tense. Both of them stayed armed, watching the horizon for signs of trouble. They worked the ranch in shifts, one person always on guard, while the other tended to the necessary tasks. But the attackers didn't return. Maybe they'd decided the fight wasn't worth it. Maybe they'd moved on to easier targets. Or maybe they were just waiting. A week passed. Then 2. Slowly, the ranch began to feel normal again. Elena's sleep improved. The constant knot of tension in her shoulders started to ease. And something else began to shift between her and Cole. It started small. Cole bringing her coffee before she asked, Elena mending his shirts without being prompted. Small gestures that added up to something more than obligation. They started talking more. Not about anything important, just observations about the weather, the cattle, the work that needed doing. But the conversations grew longer, more comfortable. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Cole said, "You never talk about your life before." Elena stiffened. "Not much to talk about. Your family, friends, the man who—" He stopped. "Victor," she said the name flatly. "You can say it. It doesn't hurt anymore." That wasn't entirely true, but it was getting there. Cole nodded. "What was he like?" "Charming, ambitious, good at saying what people wanted to hear." Elena picked at a thread on her sleeve. "I thought he loved me. Turns out he just loved the idea of me. The mayor's daughter, the perfect wife to show off. When someone better came along, I became inconvenient. He's a fool." Elena glanced at him, surprised by the vehemence in his voice. "You're strong," Cole continued, "capable. You don't quit when things get hard. Most people can't say that." Her throat tightened. "I didn't used to be. Strong, I mean. I was soft. Useless. You're not useless now." "No." She looked out at the darkening land. "I'm not." They sat in silence for a while. Then Elena asked, "What about you? You said you lost people." Cole's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "I had a brother, younger, Jacob." Had. Past tense. "What happened?" "Rustlers, 5 years ago. They came during the winter when the snow was bad and help was days away. Jacob tried to fight them off while I was in town getting supplies." Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. "By the time I got back, they'd taken the cattle and shot him. Left him to bleed out in the snow." Elena's chest constricted. "Cole, I found him the next morning, still alive, barely. He died before I could get him to town." Cole stared at the horizon, his face like stone. "I hunted down every man who was there that night. Took me 2 years. But I found them all." The air between them felt heavy. Elena didn't ask what he'd done when he found them. She didn't need to. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "It was a long time ago." But his hands were clenched into fists. Elena reached out without thinking and put her hand over his. His skin was warm, rough, with calluses. Cole looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. Something unguarded flickered in his eyes. "You're not alone anymore," Elena said. His throat worked. "Neither are you." The moment stretched between them, fragile and new. Then Cole slowly turned his hand over and squeezed her fingers. They sat like that until the stars came out, hands clasped, watching the darkness settle over the land. The next morning, Elena woke to find Cole already up, but he'd left a cup of coffee waiting for her on the table, still warm. It was such a small thing, but it made her smile. Over the following weeks, the distance between them continued to shrink. They still slept separately, Cole downstairs, Elena in the loft, but the separation felt less deliberate now, more like habit than necessity. They worked side by side during the day, their movements synchronized, anticipating each other's needs. Cole would reach for a tool and Elena would already be handing it to him. Elena would start to lift something heavy and Cole would be there, taking the weight. It was partnership, real partnership, and something more. Elena caught herself watching him sometimes, the way his shoulders moved when he worked, the rare smile that transformed his whole face, the way he listened when she spoke, like her words actually mattered. She thought she'd sworn off men after Victor, thought she'd never trust anyone like that again. But Cole wasn't Victor. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep or say things just to hear himself talk. He was honest to the point of bluntness, and he'd never once lied to her. When he said she was strong, he meant it. When he said she'd earned her place here, he meant that too. One afternoon, while they were mending fence together, Elena asked, "Do you ever regret it? Marrying me?" Cole looked up from the post he was securing. "Why would I regret it?" "Because you didn't know me. I could have been terrible at all of this, could have given up and left. But you didn't." "But I could have." He set down his hammer and looked at her properly. "Do you regret it?" Elena considered the question. The old, Her, the one who'd stood at that altar in a white dress, would have said yes without hesitation. That girl had wanted romance and passion and a love story. But Elena wasn't that girl anymore. No, she said, I don't regret it. Cole nodded, like that settled something. He picked up the hammer and went back to work. But Elena saw the small smile on his face. That night a storm rolled in, not as violent as before, but steady and relentless. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and rain hammered the roof. Elena was in the loft when she heard Cole climbing the ladder. She sat up, surprised. Everything all right? She asked. Roof's leaking downstairs. Figured I'd move up here until it passes. He had his bedroll under one arm. Elena shifted to make room. There's space. He spread out his bedroll on the opposite side of the loft, keeping a respectful distance. They lay in the darkness, listening to the rain. You still scared of storms? Cole asked after a while. Not as much as I used to be. What changed? Elena thought about it. I guess I have bigger things to worry about now. Cole chuckled, a low, rough sound she didn't hear often. That's one way to look at it. They fell quiet again. The storm raged outside, shaking the walls. Cole? Elena said softly. Yeah? Thank you for giving me a chance when I had nothing. She heard him shift in the darkness. You had something. You just didn't know it yet. What? Strength. Fire. A pause. You just needed a reason to use it. Elena's eyes stung. She blinked hard, grateful for the darkness. Get some sleep, Cole said gently. Morning comes early. Good night, Cole. Good night, Elena. She closed her eyes and let the sound of the rain lull her to sleep, feeling safer than she had in months. When she woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the cracks, and Cole's bedroll was already gone. But he'd left his blanket draped over her. She must have kicked hers off during the night. Elena pulled the blanket closer, breathing in the scent of leather and sage, and allowed herself a moment of pure contentment. Downstairs, she heard Cole moving around, making breakfast. She climbed down to find him at the stove, frying eggs and bacon. He glanced up when she appeared. Morning. Coffee's ready. Thank you. She poured herself a cup and leaned against the counter, watching him cook. It felt domestic, comfortable, like something a real married couple would do. What? Cole asked, noticing her staring. Nothing, just, this is nice. His mouth quirked. Eggs and bacon? All of it. Cole held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded and went back to the stove. They ate breakfast together, talking about the day's work. And Elena realized with startling clarity that she was happy. Not the giddy, foolish happiness she'd felt with Victor, the kind that evaporated the moment things got hard. This was different, deeper, built on shared work and mutual respect and 100 small kindnesses that added up to something real. She looked across the table at Cole, this hard, quiet man who'd given her a second chance, and felt her heart do something complicated. He looked up and caught her watching. What? Elena smiled. Nothing, just thinking. About? About how I ended up here. How different everything is from what I planned. Better or worse? His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Elena set down her coffee cup. Better, she said firmly. Definitely better. Cole's face softened. Good. Outside, the sun burned bright and clean. The storm washed away. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, harsh and beautiful and unforgiving. And for the first time since arriving, Elena looked at it and didn't feel afraid. She felt home. The peace lasted 6 weeks. Long enough that Elena almost let herself believe the trouble was over. Long enough that she started sleeping through the night without jerking awake at every sound. She should have known better. The rider came on a Tuesday morning, appearing on the horizon like a bad omen. Elena spotted him first while hanging laundry in the yard, the white shirt snapping in the wind. She shaded her eyes against the sun and watched him approach, something twisting in her gut. Cole emerged from the barn, saw her standing frozen, and followed her gaze. His whole body went tense. Inside, he said quietly. Who is it? Don't know yet. Inside. Now. Elena grabbed the laundry basket and hurried into the house. Through the window, she watched Cole walk out to meet the rider, his hand resting casually on his hip, close to his gun. The rider pulled up about 20 feet away. He was well dressed, his clothes too clean for someone who'd been traveling. A town man, not a rancher. Young, maybe late 20s, with slicked back hair and a smile that made Elena's skin crawl, because she knew that smile. Her hands went numb. The laundry basket hit the floor. Victor Hale sat on that horse like he owned the world. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. She just stood there, watching through the window as her past rode up to her present and dismounted. Cole's posture had changed. He looked like a wolf scenting blood. "Help you with something?" His voice carried across the yard, flat and dangerous. Victor brushed dust off his jacket, taking his time. "I'm looking for someone. Elena Cross. Heard she might have passed through this area a few months back. Nobody here by that name." "You sure about that?" Victor's eyes moved to the house, and Elena jerked back from the window. "Because I heard she got married to a rancher out here in the middle of nowhere." "Heard from who?" "People talk." Victor smiled again. "Small territory. Word gets around when a woman vanishes right after being humiliated at the altar. Some folks got concerned." "Concerned?" Cole's tone suggested he didn't believe that for a second. "Her father's been worried sick. Sent me to find her. Make sure she's all right." Victor paused. "Make sure she hasn't been taken advantage of." Elena's hands clenched into fists. Lies. Her father hadn't sent anyone. Her father had probably drunk himself into a stupor and forgotten she existed. This was Victor, coming to finish what he'd started. "Like I said," Cole repeated, "nobody here by that name. You should move on." "Now hold on." Victor took a step closer. "I've come a long way. Least you could do is let me water my horse. Maybe share a meal. I'd be happy to compensate you for your trouble." "Don't need compensation. Need you off my land." Victor's smile faded. "You're being awfully hostile for a man with nothing to hide. And you're awfully persistent for a man who's been told to leave." They stared at each other, the tension thick enough to choke on. Elena's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Then Victor's gaze shifted past Cole, back to the house. His eyes narrowed. "That's a lot of laundry for one man," he observed. "You got a wife, friend? None of your business. Is she inside? Because if she is, I'd sure like to meet her. Make sure everything's proper." Cole's hand moved to his gun. "Last warning. Get back on your horse and ride out. Now." Victor raised his hands in mock surrender, but his eyes were cold. All right. No need for threats. I'm going." He mounted up, then looked down at Cole. "But I'll be around, staying in Cottonwood for a few days. If you happen to remember seeing Elena Cross, you let me know." He turned his horse and rode off at a leisurely pace, making a show of how unintimidated he was. Cole watched until he disappeared, then strode to the house. He found Elena standing in the middle of the room, pale and shaking. "That was him," she said. "Victor." "I figured." Cole moved to the window, scanning the horizon. "He knows you're here. He can't prove it. He doesn't need proof. He just needs suspicion." Cole turned to face her. "Why would he come all this way? Why now?" Elena sank into a chair, her legs giving out. "I don't know. He left me. He walked away. Why would he—" She stopped, something clicking into place. "My father," she said slowly. "My father's the mayor. He has money, influence. And Victor wants it. He always wanted it. That's why he was going to marry me in the first place." Elena's stomach turned. "If I'm gone, if I'm declared dead or missing, my father has no heir, no one to leave his estate to, except a concerned friend who tried so hard to find her." The pieces fell together with sickening clarity. Victor hadn't come to take her back. He'd come to make sure she stayed gone, permanently. "He'll try again," Elena said. "He won't just leave." "No." Cole crossed his arms. "He won't." "So what do we do?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "We make it clear you're not going anywhere, that you're my wife, legal and binding, and he's got no claim on you. You think he'll accept that?" "I think he'll have to." Cole's jaw was set. "But we need to be smart about it. If he's working with those rustlers, and I'd bet money he is, he's got backup. We can't just shoot him and be done with it. Then what? We go public. Ride into Cottonwood tomorrow. Let people see us together. Make it official in front of witnesses. Once everyone knows you're Elena Barrett, not Elena Cross, he loses his leverage. Not Elena. It made sense. But the thought of going into town, of being seen, of facing questions and stares— "I can't," Elena whispered. "I can't go back there." Cole knelt in front of her chair, bringing himself to eye level. "Hey, look at me." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "You're not the same person who ran away from that church," he said firmly. "You're stronger now, tougher. You fought off rustlers and learned to shoot and kept this ranch running. Don't let him take that from you. He'll tell everyone what happened. He'll humiliate me all over again." "Let him try." Cole's voice was hard. "Anyone who sees you now will know you're not some helpless victim. You're a rancher's wife, my wife, and I'll stand right next to you the whole time." Elena searched his face, looking for doubt, but found only certainty. "You'd do that?" she asked. "Face down a town full of gossips for me? Already married you, didn't I? This is just paperwork." It should have hurt, that casual dismissal, but Elena knew him well enough now to hear what he wasn't saying. "Okay," she said softly. "Okay. We'll go tomorrow." Cole nodded and stood. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow's going to be long." That evening, they prepared for the trip. Cole cleaned both rifles and loaded extra ammunition. Elena packed food and water, her hands moving mechanically while her mind raced. She was going to see Victor again. After everything. After running, after rebuilding herself, after finding something real here with Cole. The thought made her want to vomit, but underneath the fear was something else. Something harder. Anger. Victor had taken enough from her, her dignity, her home, her old life. She'd be damned if she let him take this too. Night fell, and Elena climbed up to the loft. She lay in the darkness, too wired to sleep, when she heard Cole's footsteps on the ladder. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "No." He settled against the wall near her bedroll, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "You scared?" he asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you're smart." He paused. "But you don't have to be brave tomorrow. You just have to show up. I'll handle the rest." "That's not fair to you." "Who said anything about fair?" There was warmth in his voice. "We're partners, Elena. That means when one of us can't carry the weight, the other one does." Elena rolled over to face him. In the dim moonlight through the cracks, she could just make out his profile. "When did this become real?" she asked quietly. "This marriage. When did it stop being just an agreement?" Cole was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "For me? The night you stood in front of that window with a rifle, protecting what's ours. That's when I knew." Her breath caught. "Cole, you don't have to say anything. I know this wasn't what you signed up for, but I need you to know, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever Victor tries to pull, I'm not letting him take you. Not now. Not ever." Elena's throat was tight. "I don't want to go back to who I was before." "You can't. That person doesn't exist anymore." She reached out in the darkness and found his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid and real. "I'm glad I said yes," she whispered. "That day you offered. I'm glad I stayed." Cole squeezed her hand. "So am I." They stayed like that until Elena finally drifted off, still holding on to him like an anchor. The ride to Cottonwood took most of the morning. Elena wore the one dress she owned, a simple gray thing she'd traded for in town weeks ago, and Cole wore his cleanest shirt. They looked respectable. Married. The town was small but bustling when they arrived. People stopped to stare as they rode down the main street. Elena kept her chin up, refusing to shrink. Cole dismounted first and helped her down, his hand lingering at her waist. A clear claim. "Where first?" Elena asked quietly. "General store. Let people see us, hear us talking. Then the land office to file the marriage certificate properly, make it all legal and documented." They walked into the store together. The proprietor, an older woman with sharp eyes, looked up and smiled. "Mr. Barrett, haven't seen you in town for a while." "Been busy. This is my wife, Elena." The woman's eyebrows rose. "Wife? Well, congratulations. I didn't know you were courting anyone." "It was quick," Cole said evenly. "We met, we married. That's how it goes sometimes." Elena forced a smile. "Pleased to meet you, ma'am." Likewise, the woman studied Elena with interest. You look familiar. Have we met before? I don't think so. I'm from further east. Must be one of those faces? The woman turned to Cole. What can I get for you today? They made their purchases, flour, coffee, a few other necessities, while other customers filtered in and out, all of them sneaking glances at Elena. Word would spread fast. At the land office, they filed the marriage certificate and had it recorded in the county ledger. The clerk barely looked at them, just stamped the papers and filed them away. There, Cole said as they left. All official. Elena felt some of the tension ease. That wasn't so bad. Not yet. She followed his gaze and felt her heart drop. Victor was walking toward them from the saloon, flanked by two rough-looking men, the same men who'd attacked the ranch. Well, well, Victor said, stopping a few feet away. Found you after all, Elena. Cole stepped slightly in front of her. Her name's Elena Barrett, and you need to back off. Victor's eyes flicked to Cole, then back to Elena. Barrett? Really? You married this rancher? Yes, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt. I did. How convenient, right after running away from our wedding. Victor's smile was sharp, almost like you had it planned. I didn't plan anything. You left me at the altar, remember? A moment of cold feet. I came to apologize, to bring you home, and you were gone. He spread his hands. Your poor father has been beside himself. My father doesn't care where I am, and you know it. That's not true. He wants you back, safe, with people who actually care about you. Victor's gaze raked over Cole with obvious disdain. Not trapped on some failing ranch in the middle of nowhere. Cole's voice dropped to something dangerous. The ranch is fine, and she's not trapped. She's exactly where she wants to be. Is she? Victor addressed Elena directly now. Is this really what you want? Hard labor and isolation? Or did you just trade one cage for another? Elena felt the old shame trying to claw its way up. The voice that said, maybe he was right. Maybe she'd made another mistake. Maybe she wasn't strong enough for this life. But then she felt Cole's presence beside her, solid and unwavering, and she remembered who she'd become. I chose this, she said clearly. I chose him, and I'm not going anywhere with you. Victor's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you in the first place. Someone on the street had stopped to watch. Then another person. A small crowd was forming. Victor noticed. His jaw tightened. Fine. Stay out here if you want. But when this falls apart, and it will, don't come crying to me. I won't. Elena stepped forward, putting herself between Cole and Victor. Leave us alone. Go back to Salvation Creek and tell my father I'm happy. Tell him I'm married and building a life, and I don't need his money or his name or anything else from that place. You think you're so different now, Victor said softly, for her ears only. But you're still the same scared girl who couldn't handle being left alone. How long before you realized that? The words hit like a slap. For a second, Elena wavered. Then Cole's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. She's not alone, Cole said, and she's not scared. Are we done here? Victor stared at them both, his face twisting with something ugly. Then he turned and walked away, his two companions following. Elena watched him go, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. You did good, Cole murmured. Real good. I wanted to hit him. So did I. But this was better. The crowd was dispersing now, people going back to their business but clearly eager to spread the gossip. Elena Barrett, formerly Elena Cross, married to Cole Barrett, standing up to some city man who'd come looking for her. The story would be all over the county by sunset. Come on, Cole said gently. Let's get home. They rode back in silence. Elena felt wrung out, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical labor. But she'd done it. She'd faced Victor, and she hadn't broken. As the ranch came into view, Elena felt something settle in her chest. Relief. Homecoming. This was where she belonged now. They unsaddled the horses and put away the supplies. Cole started a fire while Elena put on coffee. The familiar routine was soothing after the chaos of town. You think he'll leave now? Elena asked, sinking into a chair. No. Cole joined her at the table. But at least everyone knows you're my wife now. That'll make it harder for him to pull anything. He's working with those rustlers. I'm sure of it. I am too. Which means he's not just going to give up and go home. Cole's face was grim. He'll make a move, soon. What kind of move? I don't know, but we need to be ready. Elena nodded slowly. The ranch? He'll come for the ranch. Probably. How many men does he have? Saw 2 today, but if he's been planning this, there could be more. Maybe the whole gang that hit us before. Cole stood and paced to the window. We can't defend against a full assault, not just the 2 of us. So we get help. From who? The nearest ranchers are days away. Elena thought hard. What about the town? There must be men who'd stand with us. For pay, or just to stop rustlers? Maybe, but that takes time. And I don't think Victor's going to give us that. As if summoned by his name, gunfire cracked across the valley. Elena and Cole both dove for the rifles. Through the window, they saw riders approaching, at least 6 of them, firing into the air and whooping. They're trying to stampede the cattle, Cole said. If they scatter the herd, we're finished. What do we do? Cole grabbed ammunition and started loading his pockets. You stay here and defend the house. I'm going after the herd. That's insane. I don't have a choice. He grabbed her shoulders. This ranch is all we have. If they take the cattle, we lose everything. I have to go. Elena wanted to argue, but she knew he was right, and she knew what she had to do. Then I'm coming with you. Elena, you can't fight 6 men alone. You need backup. She grabbed her own rifle and ammunition. We're partners, remember? When one of us can't carry the weight, the other one does, Cole finished. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Stay close to me. Don't take unnecessary risks. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They burst out of the house together and ran for the horses. The cattle were already spooked, milling and starting to scatter. The riders were circling, firing guns and waving torches. Elena spotted Victor hanging back, watching from a safe distance. Of course, he wouldn't dirty his own hands. Cole swung into the saddle and took off toward the herd. Elena followed, her heart pounding in time with Ash's hooves. One of the riders saw them coming and peeled off, charging straight at Elena. She raised her rifle, aimed, and fired. The man jerked and fell from his horse. No time to think about it. She kept riding. Cole was ahead, trying to turn the herd back, but the cattle were panicking. One of the rustlers threw a torch onto the dry grass, and flames erupted. Fire and gunshots and chaos. Elena rode through it all, firing when she had a clear shot, focusing on staying alive and keeping the cattle from scattering into the canyon where they'd be lost forever. A bullet whined past her head. Too close. She wheeled Ash around and saw one of the rustlers bearing down on her, pistol raised. Before she could react, Cole appeared from nowhere and slammed his horse into the rustler's mount. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs and dust. Cole was up first, disarming the rustler with brutal efficiency. Go, he shouted at Elena. Cut them off at the pass. Elena didn't hesitate. She spurred Ash forward, racing ahead of the panicking cattle. If she could get in front of them, turn them back. She made it to the narrow pass just as the lead steers reached it. Standing in the saddle, she fired her rifle into the air and screamed, waving her arms. The steers shied and turned, confused. The ones behind them followed. The herd was turning, heading back toward the ranch instead of into the wilderness. Elena kept firing and shouting until her throat was raw and the rifle was empty. But it worked. Behind her, she heard more gunfire. The rustlers were falling back, realizing they'd lost. And then, cutting through the noise, a single scream. Elena's blood went cold. She wheeled Ash around and galloped back toward the ranch, reloading as she rode. She found Cole on the ground, pinned under his horse. The animal was thrashing, injured or panicked, and Cole couldn't get free. And standing over him, pistol drawn, was Victor. Stop, Elena shouted. Victor looked up, and for a moment their eyes met across the smoky chaos. Then he smiled and aimed the gun at Cole's head. Elena didn't think, just raised her rifle and fired. The shot went wide. She was still moving, the angle was bad, but it was close enough that Victor flinched and dove for cover. It gave Cole the seconds he needed to roll free as his horse finally scrambled up. Elena reached them and practically threw herself off Ash. Are you hit? No, you? I'm fine. She helped him stand, keeping her rifle trained on where Victor had disappeared. Where is he? Gone. Ran like the coward he is. Cole grabbed his own rifle from where it had fallen. Come on, we need to finish this. They advanced together, covering each other, moving through the smoke and fire. The other rustlers were retreating, their attack broken. But Victor was still out there somewhere. Elena spotted movement near the barn and fired. Wood splintered. Come out, Victor, she called. It's over. Over? His voice came from the shadows. You've got nothing left. Your herd's scattered. Your land's burning. The herd's fine, Cole cut in, and the fire's contained. You failed. Silence. Then Victor stepped out, gun raised, but hands shaking. He looked wild, desperate, nothing like the smooth, charming man who'd left her at the altar. You were supposed to disappear, he said to Elena. You were supposed to stay gone and let me have what should have been mine. My father's money was never yours. I earned it. I put up with you, with your insipid conversation and your pathetic attempts to be interesting. I played the devoted fiancé for months. His voice rose. And then you had to run off and ruin everything. I didn't ruin anything. You did that yourself. Victor's gun hand steadied. Doesn't matter now. You'll be dead either way. Both of you. You really think you can shoot us both before we shoot you? Cole asked calmly. Victor's eyes darted between them. Elena could see him calculating, realizing the odds. Drop it, she said quietly. Walk away while you still can. For a moment she thought he might. Thought he might actually be smart enough to give up. Then his finger tightened on the trigger. 2 shots rang out as one. Elena's and Cole's, perfectly synchronized. Victor went down. Elena stood frozen, smoke rising from her rifle barrel. Her ears were ringing. Cole moved forward and kicked Victor's gun away. He knelt and checked for a pulse, then looked up at Elena and shook his head. Victor Hale was dead. The man who'd humiliated her, hunted her, tried to destroy everything she'd built, gone. Elena should have felt something, grief or guilt or horror, but all she felt was tired. Come here, Cole said gently. She went to him, and he pulled her against his chest. She dropped the rifle and wrapped her arms around him, holding on tight while the reality of what they'd done sank in. We're okay, Cole murmured into her hair. It's over. We're okay. Behind them, the fire was dying down. The cattle were settling. The ranch stood. They'd survived. The sheriff arrived 2 days later with a deputy and a wagon. Elena watched from the porch as they loaded Victor's body, wrapped in canvas, alongside the 3 other dead rustlers they'd found scattered across the property. Cole stood in the yard answering questions, his voice steady and factual. Yes, they'd been attacked. Yes, they'd defended themselves. Yes, Victor Hale had been leading the assault. The sheriff, a weathered man named Mackenzie with gray in his beard, listened and took notes. He'd ridden out to inspect the burnt grass, the bullet holes in the barn, the scattered evidence of the fight. Looks like self-defense to me, he said finally, though I'll need statements from both of you for the record. Elena came down from the porch. I shot him. Victor. Cole and I both did, but I fired first. Mackenzie studied her. You know him from before? He was supposed to marry me. Left me at the altar in Salvation Creek. She kept her voice level. Then he came here trying to force me back. When I refused, he attacked our ranch. And you can prove that? There were witnesses in Cottonwood. People saw him threaten us. Cole stepped up beside Elena. And the rustlers he hired have been hitting ranches all over this territory. Check with the land office. There have been complaints for months. Mackenzie nodded slowly. I'll look into it. But from where I'm standing, you folks did what you had to do. He gestured to the damage around them. Hell, you probably saved me a lot of trouble. Been trying to track that gang for half a year. Relief washed through Elena, so strong it made her knees weak. What about his family? She asked. Will there be legal trouble? Hale got any family worth mentioning? Elena thought of her father, drunk and disinterested. No, not really. Then I doubt it. Man came onto your property with armed criminals and tried to kill you. Law's pretty clear on that. Mackenzie tipped his hat. I'll file the report. You folks take care of yourselves. He and his deputy rode off with the wagon, leaving Elena and Cole standing in the yard. The silence felt enormous. It's really over, Elena said. She didn't phrase it as a question, but Cole heard the uncertainty anyway. It's over, he confirmed. Victor's dead. The rustlers are scattered or dead. The ranch is still standing. We're still standing. Elena looked around at the scorched earth, the damaged barn, the fence that needed mending. We have a lot of work to do. We always do. Cole turned to face her. But we'll manage. We always do. The way he said we made something warm unfurl in Elena's chest. They spent the rest of the day assessing the damage. The barn needed repairs where the fire had touched it. Several sections of fence were destroyed. They'd lost 2 cattle in the chaos, 1 shot, 1 broken leg that Cole had to put down. But it could have been so much worse. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in the loft staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the moment she'd pulled the trigger, the look on Victor's face, the way he'd fallen. She'd killed a man. 2 men, if she counted the rustler from before. The old Elena, the one who'd worn white and dreamed of garden parties, would have been horrified, would have wept and prayed for forgiveness and probably never recovered. But Elena wasn't that girl anymore. She'd done what needed doing, protected what was hers, survived. Still, the weight of it pressed on her chest like a stone. She heard the ladder creak and turned her head. Cole climbed into the loft carrying 2 cups. "Thought you might want something warm," he said, offering her one. It was coffee, strong and bitter. Elena sat up and wrapped her hands around the cup. Couldn't sleep either? No. Cole settled against the wall beside her bedroll, kept thinking about what almost happened, how close it came. We won, this time. His voice was rough. But what about next time or the time after that? This land, it's not going to get easier, Elena. There'll always be something. Drought or fire or men with guns, that's just how it is out here. Elena sipped her coffee, letting the heat sink into her. Are you trying to scare me off? I'm trying to be honest. He looked at her, his face half shadowed in the dim light. When I asked you to marry me, I told you it would be hard. But I don't think I really understood what I was asking, what you'd have to become to survive it. What I'd have to become? Elena's voice sharpened. Cole, you didn't make me into anything. I chose this. Every step of the way, I chose it. I know, but nothing. She set down her cup. You think I don't know what this life costs? I've bled and sweated and shot men to protect this place. I've earned every inch of this ranch, same as you. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You're right. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, just don't treat me like I don't know my own mind. I won't. He reached out and took her hand. I need you to know you have a choice. If you want to leave, if this is too much, it's not. Elena squeezed his fingers. And I'm not leaving. This is my home, Cole. You're my... She stopped, the word catching in her throat. Cole's eyes searched hers. I'm your what? Elena's heart was pounding. She could deflect, change the subject, keep things safe and distant like they'd been doing for months. Or she could tell the truth. You're my husband, she said quietly. Not just on paper, not just for convenience. You're my actual husband. And She swallowed hard. I don't want this to be pretend anymore. The silence stretched between them, fragile as glass. Then Cole lifted his free hand and cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. It hasn't been pretend for me in a long time, he said, his voice raw. I think I started falling for you the day you rode out alone to find me. Maybe before that. Elena's breath caught. Cole, let me finish. His gray eyes were intense, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. You're the strongest person I've ever met, the bravest. And every day I wake up grateful that you said yes to my ridiculous proposal, that you stayed when you could have run, that you're here, building this life with me. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. I love you, she whispered. I think I have for a while now. I just didn't know how to say it. Cole made a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. Then he kissed her. It wasn't like the perfunctory kiss at their wedding. This was real, desperate and tender and full of months of longing, finally unleashed. Elena kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. Cole's arms came around her, and she felt safe in a way that had nothing to do with rifles or locked doors. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. Marry me again, he said. Elena blinked. What? Marry me again, properly this time. Not in some quick ceremony with no witnesses. I want to do it right. Want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours." A smile broke across Elena's face, bright and genuine. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." Cole grinned, that rare transformative smile that made him look years younger. "Yeah? Yeah." Elena kissed him again, softer this time. "Though technically we're already married. The paperwork's filed and everything." "Don't care. I want to marry you anyway." They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Eventually they lay down together on Elena's bedroll, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Cole stayed in the loft all night. Elena fell asleep with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and didn't have a single nightmare. The next morning, they woke tangled together, sunlight streaming through the cracks in the walls. Elena stretched and found Cole already awake, watching her with an expression so soft it made her chest ache. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." They stayed in bed longer than they should have. The chores could wait, just existing together in the quiet morning light. Eventually, though, the ranch demanded their attention. Over breakfast, they made plans. "We should do it soon," Elena said, pouring coffee. "The wedding, before winter sets in." "Agreed. Maybe 3 weeks? Gives us time to repair the barn and get word out." Cole buttered a piece of bread. "Who do you want there?" Elena thought about it. "The people from Cottonwood, maybe. The folks who've been kind to us. The sheriff, since he helped with the investigation." "What about you?" "There's a couple of neighboring ranchers I'm on good terms with. Haven't seen them in a while, but they'd probably come if invited." He paused. "What about your family?" The question hung in the air. Elena's first instinct was a hard no. But then she thought about her mother, quiet, overlooked, but not unkind. About her father, who'd probably drink himself into an early grave without her there to witness it. "My mother," she said finally. "I'll write to her. Let her know I'm all right. Invite her if she wants to come. But not my father. And not anyone else from Salvation Creek." Cole nodded. "Fair enough." That afternoon, Elena sat down and wrote the letter. It was harder than she expected, putting into words everything that had happened, everything she'd become. She kept it simple. "Dear Mother, I'm writing to tell you I'm safe and well. I'm married to a good man named Cole Barrett, and we run a cattle ranch in the Western Territory. I know you must have heard what happened with Victor. I'm sorry for any embarrassment my departure caused, but I'm not sorry I left. This is where I belong now. We're having a proper wedding ceremony in 3 weeks. You're welcome to attend if you wish, but I'll understand if you don't. Either way, know that I'm happy. Truly happy. Your daughter, Elena." She sealed it and gave it to Cole to post the next time he went to town. "Think she'll come?" he asked. "I don't know. Maybe." Elena leaned against him. "Part of me hopes she does. Part of me hopes she doesn't." "Why?" "Because if she comes, she'll see how different I am, and I don't know if she'll recognize me anymore." Cole wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Would that be such a bad thing?" Elena considered. "No, I suppose not." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. They repaired the barn, fixed the fences, rounded up the scattered cattle. Word spread about the upcoming wedding, and to Elena's surprise, people started showing up to help. The storekeeper from Cottonwood brought fabric for a dress. One of the neighboring ranchers sent his sons to help with the heavy repairs. Even Sheriff Mackenzie stopped by with a wedding gift, a new rifle, better quality than the one Elena had been using. "Figure you earned it," he said gruffly. "Taking down that gang." Elena accepted it with thanks, touched by the unexpected kindness. The community was small and rough around the edges, but it was real. These people understood the life she and Cole were building, the struggles they faced. They didn't judge her for her past or gossip about where she'd come from. Out here, what mattered was whether you could do the work and stand your ground. And Elena had proven she could do both. 5 days before the wedding, a letter arrived. Elena's hand shook as she opened it. "Dearest Elena, I was relieved to receive your letter. Your father and I have been worried, though he wouldn't admit it. He's been difficult since you left, drinking more, withdrawn. I think he blames himself, though he'd never say so. I'm happy you found someone who treats you well. Cole sounds like a good man. I won't be able to attend the ceremony. Your father needs me here, and the journey is too far for a woman my age. But I want you to know I'm proud of you. You were always stronger than people gave you credit for, including yourself. Build a good life out there, sweetheart. Be happy. That's all a mother can ask. With love, Mother. Elena read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and tucked it away. She wasn't surprised her mother wouldn't come, but the words of support meant more than she'd expected. Everything all right? Cole asked, seeing her expression. Yeah, Elena smiled. Everything's fine. The day of the wedding dawned clear and bright. Elena woke alone. Cole had spent the night in the barn, insisting it was bad luck to see the bride before the ceremony, and dressed in the new gown the storekeeper had helped her make. It was simple but beautiful, cream-colored with lace at the collar, nothing like the elaborate white monstrosity she'd worn the first time. This was better. She pinned her hair up, tucked a wildflower behind her ear, and stepped outside. The ranch had been transformed. People had set up benches in the yard, strung up lanterns, brought food and drinks. There were maybe 30 people gathered, more than Elena had expected, and at the front, standing with the preacher from Cottonwood, was Cole. He'd cleaned up, new shirt, hair trimmed, boots polished, and when he saw her, his whole face lit up. Elena walked toward him, and this time there was no fear, no doubt, just certainty. This was right. This was real. They stood together in front of their friends and neighbors, and the preacher began the ceremony. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. But Elena barely heard the traditional words. She was too focused on Cole's face, on the way he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. When it came time for vows, the preacher gestured to Cole. Cole took Elena's hands. I'm not good with words, he started. Never have been. But I want you to know, you changed everything for me. Made this place feel like home instead of just land. Made me remember what it means to have someone worth protecting, worth building for. I promise to stand with you, work beside you, and love you for as long as I'm breathing. Elena's eyes were wet. You're better with words than you think, she whispered. Then, louder, I came here with nothing, no home, no hope, no idea who I was supposed to be. You gave me a chance when I needed it most. More than that, you let me become someone I'm proud of. You saw strength in me before I knew it was there. I promise to be your partner in everything, to fight for what we've built, and to love you, not because I need to, but because I choose to, every single day. The preacher smiled. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Again. Soft laughter rippled through the crowd. You may kiss your bride. Cole pulled Elena close and kissed her, and this time it meant everything. The celebration lasted into the evening. There was music, someone had brought a fiddle, and dancing and more food than Elena had seen in months. People came up to congratulate them, to shake Cole's hand and hug Elena, welcoming her officially into the community. Sheriff Mackenzie raised a toast. To the Barretts, two of the toughest people I know. May your herd grow fat and your troubles stay small. Everyone drank, cheering. Elena stood beside Cole, his arm around her waist, and looked at the faces around her. These weren't the people she'd grown up with, the ones who'd watched her humiliation. These were people who knew her as she was now, strong, capable, unafraid. This was her family now. As the sun set and the lanterns glowed warm against the darkness, Cole pulled Elena aside. Want to escape our own party? He asked with a grin. Desperately. They slipped away from the crowd and walked out to the pasture, where the cattle grazed peacefully under the stars. The music and laughter faded behind them until it was just the two of them and the vast, open land. This is perfect, Elena said softly. Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Yeah, it is. They stood like that for a while, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. Are you happy? Cole asked. Elena thought about the question, about everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained, about the girl who'd fled into the wilderness and the woman who'd fought to defend her home. Yes, she said. I really am. Cole pressed a kiss to her temple. Good, because I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way. Elena turned in his arms and kissed him properly, pouring everything she felt into it. When they broke apart, she said, We should get back. People will notice we're gone. Let them notice, but Cole took her hand and led her back toward the house anyway. The party wound down eventually. People said their goodbyes, promising to visit again soon, and rode off into the night. Cole and Elena stood on the porch, waving until the last lantern disappeared over the ridge. Then they were alone. Cole turned to Elena, suddenly uncertain. "So, wedding night," Elena laughed. "We've been married for months." "I know, but—" She took his hand. "Come on." They went inside together, closing the door on the world outside. And for the first time since Elena had arrived at this ranch, everything felt exactly as it should be. Later, lying in the darkness with Cole's arms around her, Elena stared up at the ceiling and marveled at how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been broken and humiliated, running from a ruined life with nowhere to go. Now she was here, home, with a man who loved her, not despite her scars, but because of everything she'd survived to earn them. "What are you thinking about?" Cole murmured sleepily. "Just how strange life is. How one horrible day can lead to something so good." "You regretting anything?" "Not a single thing." Cole pulled her closer. "Me neither." Elena closed her eyes and let herself drift off, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring more hard work, more challenges, more of the brutal, beautiful reality of frontier life. But she'd face it all with Cole beside her, and that made everything worth it. Winter came early that year, sweeping down from the mountains with teeth of ice and wind that cut through everything. Elena woke one morning to find the world transformed, white and silent and brutally cold. Cole was already up, stoking the fire. "Storm's going to get worse," he said, not looking away from the flames. "We need to move the cattle closer to the barn, get them sheltered before it really hits." Elena dressed quickly in layers, trousers, 2 shirts, Cole's heavy coat. They worked through the morning in numbing cold, driving the herd into the protected pasture near the buildings. Snow fell steadily, thick flakes that obscured the horizon. By afternoon, they couldn't see more than 20 feet in any direction. "That's it," Cole shouted over the wind. "We're done. Inside, now." They stumbled into the house, half frozen, and Elena immediately went to make hot coffee while Cole secured the doors and windows. Outside, the storm howled like something alive and angry. "How long will this last?" Elena asked, her fingers numb around the coffee cup. "Could be days. Could be a week." Cole joined her by the fire. "We've got enough supplies. We'll be fine." But that night, the temperature dropped so low that water froze in the basin. Elena and Cole slept pressed together for warmth, listening to the wind trying to tear the house apart. 3 days into the storm, they heard it. A sound like thunder, but wrong. Rhythmic, growing louder. Cole was on his feet instantly, grabbing his rifle. "Stay here." "What is it?" "Someone's out there." He opened the door against the wind, snow blasting into the house. Elena crowded behind him, peering into the white chaos. A figure emerged from the storm, stumbling, barely upright, then another, and another. "Help!" one of them called, voice raw. "Please!" Cole didn't hesitate. He waded into the storm and grabbed the first person, hauling them toward the house. Elena took the second, a woman, her lips blue with cold. Together they got all 3 strangers inside and slammed the door. The strangers collapsed near the fire, shaking violently. They were young, early 20s maybe, dressed for travel, but not for this kind of weather. "What were you thinking?" Cole demanded as Elena grabbed blankets. "Being out in this?" The woman, blonde, her face raw from windburn, managed to speak through chattering teeth. "We were heading to Cottonwood. Got caught when the storm hit. Our horses scattered. We've been walking for 2 days. 2 days? Elena couldn't imagine. They'd be dead by morning if they'd stayed out there. "Get warm," she said, wrapping blankets around them. "I'll make soup." Over the next hour, the strangers slowly came back to life. Their names were Sarah, Thomas, and James. Siblings heading west to claim land their uncle had left them. They'd been confident, well-supplied, sure they could handle anything. The frontier had other ideas. "We lost everything," Thomas said miserably, his hands wrapped around a bowl of soup. "The horses, our supplies, the deed to the property. It's all gone." Cole and Elena exchanged a look. They both knew that feeling, being stripped down to nothing, forced to start over. "The storm will break eventually," Cole said. "When it does, we'll help you get to Cottonwood. See what can be salvaged." "Why would you do that?" Sarah asked. "You don't know us." "Because someone helped me once," Elena said quietly. "When I had nothing. She felt Cole's eyes on her, warm despite the cold. The storm lasted 5 more days. The house felt crowded with 5 people, but they managed. Elena cooked, stretching their supplies. Cole kept the fire going constantly. The siblings told stories about their journey west, their hopes for the land, their dreams of building something. Elena listened and remembered being that naive, thinking hope and determination were enough. The frontier taught you different. It taught you that survival required more than optimism. It required grit and sacrifice and the willingness to become someone harder than you'd ever imagined. But it also taught you that you weren't alone, that sometimes strangers became family, that the harshest places could forge the strongest bonds. On the 6th night, as Sarah helped Elena clean up after dinner, she said, "How did you two meet?" Elena smiled. "He found me at the edge of his property. I was running from my old life. He offered me a deal, marriage in exchange for help running the ranch." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's so practical." "It was. At first." Elena glanced at Cole, who was teaching Thomas and James to play cards. "But somewhere along the way, it became real. Do you ever regret it, giving up your old life?" Elena thought about Salvation Creek, about the girl in the white dress who'd wanted romance and security and a life that looked good from the outside. "No," she said firmly. "That life wasn't mine. I was just playing a part someone else wrote for me. This," she gestured around the small, crowded house, "this is mine. I built it, earned it. No one can take that away." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I hope I can be that strong." "You will be, or you won't survive." Elena said it gently but honestly. "The frontier doesn't care about your hopes. It cares about what you're willing to do, what you're willing to become." The storm finally broke on the 7th day. They woke to silence and stepped outside to find the world buried under 3 feet of snow, pristine and blinding white. Cole and Thomas dug out the barn, while Elena and Sarah checked on the cattle. James, still recovering from frostbite on his fingers, stayed inside and kept the fire going. Miraculously, they hadn't lost any animals. The sheltered pasture had protected them. "You got lucky," Cole told the siblings as they prepared to leave for Cottonwood. "Most people wouldn't have survived what you went through." "We know," Thomas said soberly. "Thank you for everything." "Pay it forward," Elena said. "When you get settled, when you build your place, help the next person who needs it." Sarah hugged her tight. "We will, I promise." They watched the siblings ride off on borrowed horses, supplies packed, carrying directions to Cottonwood, and letters of introduction from Cole. "Think they'll make it?" Elena asked. "Maybe, if they learn fast." Cole put his arm around her. "Come on, we've got work to do." The work never ended. As winter deepened, they spent long days maintaining the ranch, keeping animals alive, fighting the cold. But the evenings were theirs, sitting by the fire, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for spring. "We should expand," Elena said one night. "Build another barn. Maybe get some chickens, start a proper garden." Cole looked up from the harness he was mending. "That's ambitious. We survived Victor. We survived the storm. We can survive anything," she grinned. "Besides, I'm tired of eating beans every night. You volunteered to cook, and I'm volunteering to grow vegetables. See how that works?" Cole laughed and pulled her close. "All right. Come spring, we'll expand. Make this place into something real." "It already is real. Something bigger than," he kissed her forehead, "something that lasts." February brought a thaw, and with it, unexpected news. A rider arrived from Cottonwood with a letter for Elena. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Dear Elena, I'm writing to inform you that your father passed away 3 weeks ago. The doctor said it was his heart, but we both know it was the drink." The funeral was small. He's buried next to his parents in Salvation Creek. I'm settling his affairs now. As his only heir, his estate passes to you. The house, his savings, and his position's pension. I don't expect you to return for it. I know you've built a new life. If you'd like, I can arrange to have the assets sold and the money transferred to you. Let me know what you wish. I'm proud of how far you've come, sweetheart. Your father was too, even if he never said it. Be well. Mother. Elena read the letter twice, then set it down. She felt nothing. No grief, no relief, just a distant sadness for a man she'd barely known, who'd barely known her. "You all right?" Cole asked gently. "My father died." She handed him the letter. "My mother wants to know what to do with his estate." Cole read quickly, then looked at her. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. I don't need his money. We're doing fine. We could use it to expand, build that barn, buy more cattle, make the ranch everything we've talked about." He paused. "Or you could send it to your mother. Take care of her." Elena considered. Her mother had stayed in a loveless marriage, sacrificed her own happiness for duty and propriety. She deserved better. "Half to my mother," Elena decided. "The other half we use for the ranch. That feels right." Cole nodded. "I'll help you write the response." They composed the letter together that evening. Elena kept it brief, professional, kind. She thanked her mother, specified how to divide the assets, and included a standing invitation to visit if she ever wanted. She didn't expect her mother to come, but the offer felt important anyway. Spring arrived like a promise, turning the frozen world green and gold. Elena and Cole threw themselves into expansion. They hired 2 ranch hands, young men looking for work, and started construction on the new barn. Elena planted a garden, turning over hard earth and coaxing seeds to life. It was different from ranch work, quieter, more patient, but she found she liked it. Liked the certainty that if you did the work, the plants would grow. Nothing was guaranteed on the frontier, but you could stack the odds in your favor. By summer, the ranch was transformed. The new barn stood solid and spacious. The garden produced more vegetables than they could eat. The herd had grown, healthy and fat on good grazing. And Elena discovered she was pregnant. She'd suspected for weeks before she was sure, the nausea, the exhaustion, the changes in her body. But she didn't tell Cole right away. She wanted to be certain, wanted to find the right moment. She chose a warm evening in late June. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, tired from a long day's work. "Cole," she said quietly, "I have something to tell you." He turned to her, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Actually, everything's very right." She took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby." Cole's eyes went wide. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. We're... Yes." Elena laughed at his expression. "Sometime in January, best I can figure." "A baby?" He said it like he was testing the word. Then louder. "A baby." He grabbed Elena and spun her around, laughing like she'd never heard him laugh before. When he set her down, his eyes were wet. "I'm going to be a father," he said, wonder in his voice. "You're going to be a great father." Elena cupped his face. Patient and strong and honest. Everything a kid needs. "I don't know the first thing about raising children." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." She smiled. "Like we figure out everything else." That night they lay in bed talking about the future. Names they liked, how to modify the loft to make room for a cradle, whether they'd need to hire more help during the pregnancy. "Are you scared?" Cole asked. "Terrified," Elena admitted. "Childbirth is dangerous out here. And raising a child in this environment..." "Hey," Cole pulled her close. "We've survived everything else. We'll survive this too." "I know. I want to be a good mother. Better than mine was." "You will be. You're already braver and stronger than anyone I know." Elena closed her eyes and let herself believe it. The pregnancy was difficult. Elena tried to keep working, but exhaustion and sickness forced her to slow down. Cole took over more of the physical labor, refusing to let her lift anything heavy or work in the heat. It drove her crazy at first. She hated feeling useless, but eventually she accepted that growing a person took its own kind of strength. By fall, her belly was unmistakable. The ranch hands treated her like glass, which amused her. The neighbors who visited brought advice and baby clothes and stories about their own children. Elena was building a new kind of community, not based on old family names or social standing, but on shared struggle and mutual support. This was what family was supposed to be. In November, a letter arrived from her mother. Elena opened it, expecting news about the estate settlement. Instead, she found something else. "Dearest Elena, I've sold the house and arranged everything as you requested, but I'm writing because I've made a decision. I'm leaving Salvation Creek. There's nothing for me here anymore, and I'm tired of living in the shadow of your father's failures. I thought perhaps I might come west, see this ranch you've built, meet this husband you've chosen. If the offer still stands, I'd like to be there when my grandchild is born. I know I wasn't the mother you deserved. I was too weak, too afraid to stand up for myself or you, but I'd like to try to be a better grandmother, if you'll have me. With love and hope, Mother. Elena read the letter 3 times, her vision blurring. Cole, she called. He came in from the barn, concerned. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. She handed him the letter. My mother's coming. Cole read, then looked at her. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Happy? Nervous? Both? Elena pressed a hand to her belly, where the baby was kicking. She wants to be here when the baby comes. Then we'll make room. Cole pulled her into a hug. This house is getting crowded. Elena laughed through tears. We'll manage. We always do. Her mother arrived in December just as the first snow began to fall. Elena barely recognized her at first. The woman who stepped off the wagon was thinner, grayer, but stood straighter than Elena remembered. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then her mother crossed the distance and hugged her tight. Look at you, her mother whispered. So strong, so beautiful. I missed you, Elena said, surprising herself. I missed you too, sweetheart. Over the following weeks, her mother settled into ranch life with surprising ease. She helped with cooking and cleaning, taught Elena old family recipes, and listened to stories about everything that had happened since the wedding. I'm sorry, her mother said one evening as they prepared dinner, for not standing up to your father, for not protecting you better. You did what you could, Elena said. We both survived the only way we knew how. But you did more than survive. You thrived. Her mother smiled, tears in her eyes. You became someone I'm proud to know. Elena hugged her, and something old and painful finally healed. The baby came on a brutal January night during a blizzard. The midwife from Cottonwood couldn't make it through the storm, so it was just Elena, her mother, and Cole. The pain was worse than anything Elena had experienced. Worse than fear, worse than physical labor, worse than getting shot at. She screamed and wept and cursed, convinced she was going to die. But her mother held her hand and Cole wiped her forehead, and together they brought a tiny, squalling girl into the world. Elena held her daughter for the first time and felt her entire universe shift. She's perfect, she whispered. She's beautiful, Cole agreed, his voice thick with emotion. What should we name her? Elena looked at her mother, then at Cole, then at the baby with a shock of dark hair and fierce gray eyes. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope for the future. Hope that the hard things they'd survived meant something. Hope that the legacy they were building would outlast them. Cole kissed Elena's forehead. Hope Barrett. I like it. The months after Hope's birth blurred together in sleepless nights and overwhelming love. Elena learned to navigate motherhood the same way she'd learned everything else on the ranch, through trial and error, stubbornness, and help from people who cared. Her mother stayed through spring, teaching Elena how to care for an infant, sharing stories about Elena's own childhood that Elena had never heard. You were so determined, her mother said one afternoon, rocking Hope. Even as a baby, once you decided you wanted something, nothing could stop you. I don't remember being like that. Because you learned to hide it. Learned that good girls didn't make waves. Her mother looked at her seriously. I'm glad you unlearned that lesson. Glad you found a place where you could be yourself. Elena thought about the girl she'd been. Soft, uncertain, desperate for approval. Then she thought about who she'd become, scarred, capable, unafraid. I didn't find this place, she said. I built it. Yes, her mother agreed. Yes, you did. In May, her mother announced she was leaving. Not forever, she clarified, seeing Elena's face. But I need to build my own life now, figure out who I am outside of being someone's wife or mother. Where will you go? Cottonwood, to start. There's a boarding house that needs a manager, and the owner offered me the position. It's honest work, and I'll be close enough to visit. She smiled. Close enough to watch Hope grow up. Elena hugged her tight. Thank you for coming, for being here. Thank you for letting me be part of this, part of your family. After her mother left, Elena stood in the yard holding Hope and watching the horizon. Cole came up beside her. You all right?
Yeah, just thinking about how different everything is from what I imagined. Better or worse? Elena looked at their land, the house they'd defended, the barn they'd built, the cattle grazing peacefully. She looked at Hope, sleeping against her shoulder. She looked at Cole, this man who'd given her a chance when she had nothing. Better, she said firmly. So much better than I ever imagined. That summer, they threw a party for Hope's first birthday. The house overflowed with neighbors, ranch hands, people from Cottonwood. Sarah, Thomas, and James came. They'd successfully claimed their land and were building a life of their own. Sheriff Mackenzie brought a hand-carved rocking horse. Elena's mother arrived with a quilt she'd sewn. The celebration lasted until sunset, full of laughter and music and hope for the future. As Elena watched Hope toddle around the yard, chased by children of neighboring ranchers, she felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace, contentment, belonging. This was home. Not because it was easy or comfortable or safe, but because she'd fought for it, bled for it, built it with her own two hands alongside a man who'd never promised her romance but had given her something better, partnership, respect, and love that was real because it was earned. That evening, after everyone had left and Hope was asleep, Elena and Cole sat on the porch watching the stars come out. I've been thinking, Cole said, about expanding again, maybe buying the adjacent property, increasing the herd. Getting ambitious in your old age? Elena teased. Just thinking about the future, about what we want to leave for Hope, for whatever other children come along. Elena's hand went to her stomach. She wasn't pregnant yet, but she wanted more children, wanted to fill this ranch with life and laughter. Tell me what you see, she said, when you imagine the future. Cole was quiet for a moment, thinking. I see this place thriving, multiple buildings, more cattle, maybe horses too. I see Hope grown up, strong like her mother, maybe with siblings. I see us old and gray, sitting right here, watching our grandchildren play in this yard. That's a good future. What do you see? Elena considered. I see all of that, but mostly I see us. Still together, still fighting for what matters, still proving that the best things aren't the ones you're given, they're the ones you build yourself. Cole took her hand. I love you, Elena Barrett. I love you too. She leaned against his shoulder. Thank you for finding me that day, for offering me a choice when I thought I had none. Thank you for saying yes, for staying, for becoming my partner in all of this. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around them. Somewhere in the darkness, cattle lowed softly. The wind whispered through the grass. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, harsh and beautiful, and theirs. Elena thought about the journey that had brought her here, the humiliation that had driven her into the wilderness, the desperate bargain that had saved her life, the slow transformation from broken girl to capable woman. She'd lost everything that day at the altar, her dignity, her home, her carefully planned future. But in losing everything, she'd found what actually mattered. Not security or status or other people's approval, but strength, purpose. The knowledge that she could survive anything because she'd already survived the worst. And love. Real love. Not the fairy tale kind, but the kind built on trust and shared struggle and choosing each other every single day. Elena closed her eyes and listened to the sounds of her ranch, her home, and felt grateful. Not for the easy path, not for the life she'd planned, but for the hard road that had led her here, to this porch, with this man, on this land they'd defended and built and made their own. She'd been abandoned at the altar and left with nothing, but she'd taken that nothing and turned it into everything that mattered. And that, Elena thought, was worth more than any fairy tale ending, because this wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning, a legacy, a life built on grit and choice and the unshakable certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The frontier had tested her, broken her down, and forced her to rebuild herself stronger, and she'd passed every test, not by being perfect or fearless or unbreakable, but by being human, flawed, and scared and determined. By refusing to quit even when quitting seemed like the only option. By choosing strength over comfort, truth over pretense, and partnership over romance. By building something real in a place that demanded everything and promised nothing.
Cole squeezed her hand and Elena squeezed back. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More work, more struggle, maybe more threats. But they'd face it together, the way they'd faced everything else. And whatever came, they'd survive it. Because that's what they did. That's what they'd always do. Elena Barrett, once Elena Cross, once a humiliated bride, now a rancher, a wife, a mother, a survivor, smiled into the darkness and felt nothing but gratitude for the life she'd chosen, the life she'd earned, the life that was entirely, completely, perfectly hers.